Welcome to Accounting for Old Cars, and today we're going to take my 1967 Triumph Vitesse 2 litre for a little journey down the A12, really just to sort of test some work that's been done to the transmission. In the last couple of weeks I've asked David Aspinall at Anglian Triumph Services out of Ditchingham to go through the transmission for me. We've noticed over the last couple of months of vibration that occurs at about 70 miles an hour. Of course, I don't drive very often at 70 miles an hour, no motorways in Suffolk, and I try to avoid dual carriageways because I prefer driving in the sort of A roads and B roads. But what we found is once you get up to 70, and certainly once you get above 70, the car has this vibration. It's not noisy, but it sort of thrums, if you like, right between the front seats. So we weren't sure if it was gearbox related, and this car's had its gearbox rebuilt twice actually, so hopefully it wasn't that. But it did occur to us that it might be something like the prop shaft being out of balance. In the end, what they discovered was that the yokes on the prop shaft were quite worn, and it actually turns out to be almost as cheap to buy a new replacement prop shaft as it is to actually rebalance the old one. So that's what we've done. So we've managed to get that changed, and I picked the car up this morning, and what I want to do is to sort of get to a situation where I can get onto the A12, onto a bit of dual carriageway. Roads are slightly quieter this afternoon, and we'll take her up to speed and just see how we get on, and whether or not Dave's been able to cure the problem or not. But I thought in the meantime I'll show you a little bit of the sort of landscape we're in at the moment, and I can also give you a bit of a tour of Tess, because I don't think I've actually given a sort of cook's tour of this one. So what I'll do is I'll swap the camera around and then right, so what you can probably see behind us is the old control tower at Parham Airfield, and as I mentioned in one or two videos, this is a sort of great spot, very evocative actually. We are actually standing on one of the old runways here, and this is a typical sort of World War II airfield in that it had this sort of A-shaped runways to allow planes obviously to take off into prevailing wind, but also having three, allowing for the fact that there would be accidents, and occasionally the airfields themselves would be bombed. So this is where we are. Anyway, tell you a little bit about Tess. So as you can see, she is pretty much sort of standard as far as cosmetics are concerned. The wheels are very much the original pressed steel wheels with the original factory spec hubcaps and trims. So coming around, I haven't put the tonneau on, which I ought to have done, but it threatened rain earlier, so I wasn't sure. You can see inside you've got room for two adults in the front and two children in the back, or two uncomfortable adults in the back as well. She's got a particularly nice dashboard. This was refurbished when the car was restored back in 2000 by one of the previous owners, and again the dashboard was re-veneered, as were the door cappings as well. Again, these cars have got quite good sized boots. I'll show you that as well. So usual stuff there. The picnic basket is actually a cunningly disguised toolbox. I don't like people to think that I carry a bunch of tools, because that just implies that I think the car may break down, and of course that's not what happens with all cars at all. Give you a little bit of a tour of the engine bay as well. Let's see what you think. So, just slow you down a little bit. So these caps here, Now this is going to be tricky one-handed. Excuse me while I do that. Oh, there we go. So, one lesser known fact actually, you'll see that we've got 2 litre badge here clearly. On Bess, the Mark II, that actually 2 says Mark II, and then of course we've got the Triumph script on the bonnet as well. But on these little levers here that open the bonnet, you've got this wonderful M, and most people don't even notice it or recognise what it is, but that M stands for Michelotti, and Giovanni Michelotti was obviously the designer of the Herald, and then so many other Triumphs, including Herald, Vitesse, GT6, Spitfire, Triumph 2000, 1300, the Dolomite 1500, Triumph Stag was his, TR4 and TR5, and obviously Michelotti also styled cars for Ferrari and Maserati. But anyway, that's what the little M badge stands for. We're looking obviously at the 6-cylinder engine. You can see there is an aftermarket servo on this one. People are divided about this. Even with the servo, you still need to use your muscles to actually get the car to stop. And then we've also swapped out the original dynamo for an alternator because that seems to make sense. And then coming around the other side, just have a look, and we've got the twin Stromberg carburetors. These have been, well, the Strombergs are original, of course, but the K&N filters are an upgrade. I'm not sure what the trade-off here is. I would imagine that they're better breathing than the factory option, which is a closed box option, but I also think they're drawing in more warm air, or hot air I really should say, under the bonnet. The factory ones had the option of running hoses to the front, so you got sort of exclusively cool air. So I don't know. The other thing that we've got on this one, which is different from the Mark II, is this has an electric fan, and that has its advantages, particularly in the winter. It keeps the car warm. It keeps the engine running at sort of optimum temperature as well. For anyone who doesn't know what this bit is, this is a PCV valve, which basically is allowing the sort of gases to be drawn out of the rocker cover, and then they're sort of, it traps the oil in this bit here and then is sucked into the inlet manifold, and then burnt off in the engine. If you ever see a 1600 Vitesse, you'll see, as it was common with lots of cars from the sort of 50s, it had a sort of breather cap on the rocker cover, for an oil breather cap, no PCV valve, and then there was an exit breather on the other side of the engine, which meant it would belch out sort of gases from the crankcase, and quite often oil as well. And a lot of people will tell you in the 1950s and early 60s, it's quite common to see sort of little trails of oil down the middle of the roads, where most cars and trucks had these sort of breather pipes that just put the oil straight onto the tarmac. Interesting to think about what it was like running a motorcycle in those days, particularly in the wet. I imagine that the advent of these breather valves did quite a lot for road safety. And then down here we've got the master cylinder here for the brakes and for the clutch as well, and then obviously windscreen wiper motor, and then washer wattle. On this car, although I still have kept the button on the dashboard for the washer, the old sort of push-in squeezy bit. There's an electric motor on that one, and that works really well. Great thing about this car, if you want to come around the other side, show you. If you want to change spark plugs, you can just sort of sit down on the tyre, put your cup of tea over here, and just work on the engine. And yeah, not many cars have that kind of facility, but yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And we have Sir Leonard Lord actually to thank for this arrangement, because it was his insistence that Standard Triumph were not going to be able to use pressed steel for the bodies for these cars, because BMC had just bought pressed steel and he wouldn't let a competitor firm continue to use them. So it's for that reason that the Herald was built on a separate chassis, and consequently it allowed for this flip up front, and of course also allowed for an estate version of a Herald, convertible, coupe, saloon, and then of course all the other small chassis Triumphs that came from it, like the Vitesse, the GT6 and Spitfire. But yeah, I think what we'll do, we'll jump in and go for a drive. Cap on, not because it's stylish, but because it's early April. It's a little bit chilly out still, despite this glorious afternoon. I've driven the car back from Ditchingham, and I haven't had the chance to actually test her at 70 yet, because there aren't any dual carriageways on the route that we've been taking. So we're going to get onto the A12 and just take her up and just see whether we can tell, you know, if there's been any difference to this, or whether actually the problem is located at either end of a prop shaft, i.e. the overdrive unit or the differential. What I have noticed is that the engagement and disengagement of the overdrive feels much smoother since the prop shaft was changed. So whether this has made a massive difference or not, we'll find out in a second. Anyway, we need to try to turn right if we can. And this being Easter Saturday, it's not too bad. So we're on the A12 at the moment, coming through a village called Little Glenham, and the speed limit here is 50, but it drops down to 30 in a second. You can let me know what you think in the comment section. What I have noticed is a sort of new vibration since the prop shaft was done, which is just as you come off the accelerator. So on a sort of half open throttle, you can hear a little bit of a rumble. and that makes me think we may be looking at the differential here, maybe one of the bearings. We'll see. But we're now in 4th gear. We're not in overdrive, and we're coming up to the national speed limit. So what I will do is I will try to accelerate past as we come in here. So we're at 60 now. We're in overdrive top, and we're at 70. And I don't know if you can tell, there is a bit of a vibration, but it is nothing like what it was before we have a prop shaft change. So there's certainly an improvement here. As I say, we're cruising at 70, and I frankly wouldn't want to take the car any faster because I'm more or less committed to obeying the speed limit. If you can see the rev counter, it's showing just under 4,000 RPM. Well, this rev counter overreads by about 500, so we are actually turning just over 3,000 RPM at 70, which for a car of this era is fine, and it means, you know, cruising fine. Well, I'm going to say that David Aspinall and his team at Anglian Triumph have scored a bit of a win for us, because yeah, there is a vibration, but it's mild. You can't hear anything, and I can certainly live with it on the few occasions that I want to take the car onto the motorway, so that's fine. Just touched 80 there for about 30 seconds, and the vibration was no greater, so I think that's absolutely sorted the problem. If you've been with me a couple of weeks ago, you'd have seen that you know, there's no way I would have wanted to take Tess over 70 at all, and 70 was pretty uncomfortable. So yeah, the wonders of prop shafts. Yeah, happy with that. Very, very happy. Right, well, we'll come off here. I'll just drop out of overdrive. Now that is something that I've never been able to do before smoothly, which is to come out of overdrive without declutching. Normally there's a sort of kind of clunk, well, not a clunk, but a sort of hesitation as the transmission takes up. So the fact that I can do that smoothly suggests that, yeah, there was some slack in the transmission, and I'm guessing it was with the universal joints in the prop shaft, so that's good news. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this short little jaunt to test Tess's prop shaft, and that you agree with me that the vibrations were minimal, if not non-existent, and that we can live with them. Look forward to seeing you in another video.